Hello, it's Illia and Guy Armstrong out of New Zealand. I'm in Canada, and we are going to talk today about body electronics. And this is our fifth discussion in the last few weeks. I think there's a few before that, isn't there, Guy? But in the last few weeks, we've done 5. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So let's start today. You'd mentioned before I press record that you are drinking something different in the last little while. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I've been eyeing up these products for a long time. This is Grainfields Grains and Greens, and they used to call some of their products, names quite specific to body electronics. But I know that the idea has remained the same, but I don't think they have the same names. So if you looked years and years ago, you would have seen some sort of body electronics themed names of products, but now they've got a no different naming, but it's the same kind of thing. It's mostly organic food. It's these ones. I've just ordered the liquids here. These ones are made of filtered water, molasses, malt, oat groats, maize, brown rice, pearl barley, rye, millet, and linseed. So it's I guess just blended down and fermented, and you can see some really good sediment here at the bottom.
Great.
Yeah, and you have to be kind of careful with them because they'll fizz and bubble. They'll get a really good fizz going. You crack the top really slowly, otherwise it'll sort of pour out everywhere.
In Pennsylvania at Doug Morrison's intensives, we used to call Grainfields the body electronics champagne.
Yeah, it kind of deserves the name, I think. Yeah.
So it really works on the gastrointestinal tract. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the first time I've had this stuff in about 20 years. So having it was a bit of an eye-opening experience. Recently, I've been drinking this kind of thing. This is sort of New Zealand made, I think, kombucha, and it's quite nice. It's quite tasty. It's available at all the local supermarkets. So Kiwis have become kind of health conscious in the last, 5 or so years, and these ones are really nice, but they're a lot sweeter than the Grainfields. They've got a little cane sugar added, and they've got, as you can see, some fruity flavors, and there's a whole range of different fruits and stuff, and I'm sure they're far superior to Coca-Cola and all that sort of nonsense. But these Grainfields ones, when I had a first swig of the Grainfields, my stomach sort of rumbled a little, and it reminded me of the feeling that you get if you go on the BE program and have some really good salads, your sprouts and mung beans and stuff like that. Those kind of really powerful foods that are sort of raw, possibly fermented, your sauerkraut or kimchi or that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Really cleans things out.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, here's to it. Hopefully I'll be able to, I won't be in too much of a healing crisis next week to be unable to do a video, but
well, yeah. I'll say a little something about the kombucha. I've stopped drinking kombucha. I would do it like sort of as a treat. I would have one maybe once every, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. I would just have a treat night and have a kombucha and I'll admit it, a small bowl of organic popcorn. My daughter and I, that was something that we have done together for a long time. So that was something that was like my treat night that I would do, maybe once or twice a month. And I've let go of both of those things. One of the things about kombucha is like it should be considered a treat, and not a healthy drink. It should you know, if you want to treat, you know, with such things. What I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about what I've been doing the last couple of weeks, and that is, I've been inspired to, I've been doing a lot of intermittent fasting for 2 or 3 years, and I've done a lot of fasting over my life. But the last 2 weeks, the last 14 days, I have really taken it to a whole new level. So I'm up to, I was up to 20 hours with 2 small meals of fasting. And the first meal was a large salad with lots of different things, like lots of really great vegetables, but all raw, lots of sprouts and hemp seed, and lots of, you know, lots of goodness in the salad, and some avocado. That's one of the fruits on this particular keto diet that that I'm using. And then on the second meal, I'm having, or I was having, a vegetables, non-starch vegetables. So I would have like a medley of all different kinds of vegetables, and a small protein, like a small piece of protein, 3 ounces approximately. So now what I'm doing, just in the last few days, I've taken that into one meal now. And so that meal consists of both the salad, the raw food, and the vegetables, which I've been doing like a little bit of a light stir fry or a light steam. With the stir fry, I use a little bit of ghee or coconut oil, and just a light, very light stir fry, especially with things like all the like cabbage and you know, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, all of those vegetables need a little bit of steam, as well as, or a little bit of heat to release the phytic acid, which inhibits the enzyme action in your stomach. So now I'm down to one meal with the raw food, the vegetables, and the 3 ounces of protein. And the only thing outside of that one meal is some celery juice and lemon water. Those are the only other things I'm having. And I'm going to keep that. I'm just going to sustain myself with that. You know, I just feel really good on it. So I'm interested to see where it goes. And I've lost already a little bit of weight, which I don't feel, I've started to feel like I'm in ketosis. So my body has changed from burning carbohydrates to burning fat. So I have lost some weight, and but I don't feel like I'm in this full transition yet. I think that can take perhaps another 2, 3, even 4 weeks to make that full transition where because I fed my body carbs, you know, unless I was fasting, I was eating some form of carb, probably daily throughout my entire life. So, and like I said, I'm taking out all starch vegetables. So I'm not eating yams or potatoes, or right now I'm not going to eat any squash. Maybe in the fall, I'll add a little bit of sweet potato or squash. I'll decide that when the time comes. But I really feel like the way that my body has responded has been so encouraging. And one of the things, I was feeling really sluggish and just not, you know, I'm on a full nutritional program, yet I just didn't feel like something was, like, I felt like there was something I could do that could improve the way I feel. So I was looking at insulin resistance and how this long-term effect of carbohydrates creates the body in this sort of insulin resistance. So your body continuously produces insulin as a result of carbohydrate injections constantly throughout the day. And you know, with these insulin spikes, the body just gets so used to doing that it just, you know, it just goes, you know, overboard, and it gets sort of stuck in that mode, and then it creates something called insulin resistance. And I feel most definitely that I was in that. A little, you know, belly fat is one of the side effects of that. So anyway, it's something, if you, you know, if you read about it or look on, I have been listening to Dr. Berg. He's got many videos on his YouTube page. So Dr. Eric Berg, and he you know, he can explain a lot of it in those videos. One of the things, there was two things. I was eating 1 to 2 apples a day, and I was intermittent fasting, like I said, for at least the last couple of years, where I would only have I wouldn't eat anything until after 12, but I was having, I mean, I wasn't eating a meal, but I was most often having a an apple in the morning. Mid-morning, I would have an apple, and often even in mid-afternoon, I would have an apple. So that was one of the big errors that I was making. I was causing this huge insulin spike in between meals, and that's one of the ways that the body gets into this this habit. The pancreas gets into this habit of producing insulin, and yeah, so I really feel like that's a really good thing for me. I'm I'm not introducing too much fat at the moment. I'm sticking, like I said, pretty much with raw, you know, some really good raw vegetables, salad, and lightly cooked vegetables, and a very small amount of protein. And I'll just say here that because of the omega-6 and 3 imbalance, people can look at Doug Morrison's 12 points on essential fatty acids. You can find that on my site, and read, you know, everything that you need to know about that. But there needs to be a balance between omega-3s and omega-6s. And chicken has a lot of omega-6. And so I've removed chicken from my diet. And also turkey, like all poultry has a lot of omega-6. So I'm avoiding that, and taking in as many omega-3s. I've gotten back on some really good quality, clean cod liver oil, and I'm taking that with my meal, with my one meal. I'm taking that cod liver oil. It needs fat soluble, it needs to be taken with food. So that's something that I've added. I was on it years ago. Doug was always like, he always recommended cod liver oil. And I remember taking it for many years back in those days. But I had gotten away from the cod liver oil. I'd gotten away from everything from the sea. But last week, after watching so many of Dr. Berg's videos, I decided to go find some really high quality, wild, fresh salmon. And of course, you know, in British Columbia, we're, you know, that's pretty easily attained. So I did eat over a period of 5 days. I just cooked the whole thing, and then I split it into small portions, and then I just had a little bit each day, and I felt really good doing that. So yeah, so I'll keep you updated on how those changes are made. I'm really happy with my energy level. I'm not getting any keto flu, or just, you know, not feeling. I'm actually feeling lighter, and I have more energy, and I can really see how those insulin spikes are lessening. And yeah, so I'm really quite excited about this sort of
Wonderful.
new direction that I've taken nutrition. And of course, there's no fruit involved, no fruit at all. There's zero fruit right now, and zero sort of what I consider like a bad carb, which is, you know, all your grains and beans, lentils, all of that. I'm not eating any of those things. No rice, no anything that's like that heavy carb. So the only carb I'm getting is the little bit I would get in with some vegetables. But according to Dr. Berg, and I feel this, we are not required. The body is, we're required to have fat, and we're required to have protein each day. But Dr. Berg says the body actually isn't required to have carbohydrates. So I'm not sure about that. I feel like what I'm going to do when I feel the change, that I want to make some changes in the diet. I feel like I want to add some berries. So I'm going to add some raspberries, blueberries, and blackberries. And I'm going to see what that does. I'm just going to experiment a little bit with sort of addition. Once I really get into full ketosis and know that my body is really into the fat burning and not relying on glucose in order to produce energy, then I will start adding a little bit of carbohydrate and see just to see what happens. Yeah, so I'll keep you updated on that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. Do you think the sugars in just normal fruits, like you buy at the organic shop or the supermarket, do you think there would, I don't know, I guess, can you eat too much
Definitely.
fruits? How much fruit is too much? And
well, according to Dr. Berg, almost all fruits are really just causing insulin spikes and lead to a lot of disease. So, and I can see that. So fruits have to be eaten very, very sparingly. There are, of course, fruits that are higher in sugar than others. So the 3 fruits that he recommends to begin, so that you can still have some fruit, yet still go into full ketosis, is avocado, tomato, and lemons and limes. Those are the fruits that we can have. And then after that, like I said, the berries are at the lowest of the glycemic index as far as turning into glucose and causing these insulin spikes. So that's why I'm starting with that. And I feel like, in contemplating it, I feel like there is, for me, I feel like as fruit comes into season here in Canada, I will experiment with it. So I will, I think watermelon is an excellent, I've always felt really good if I can find some really good organic watermelon and in season, and just have that for like, the month or whatever it is in season, really just enjoy that watermelon. I think it's really helped me, I think, flush my kidneys. And so I'm going to just go lightly with the fruit, but I want to see how that affects after I've been in ketosis, fat burning, for a period of time. Things like peaches and apples and things that are very high on the glycemic index, I'm going to tread very carefully. In fact, because I've realized that apples were kind of part of my downfall, I'm going to go, I may try an apple in the fall when they're, falling off the trees here. They're such an abundance. We're in the, near the Okanagan Valley, and, the apples here are spectacular. So I'm going to, maybe I'll try an apple and just to see what the body, how it affects me. But as far as being a part of the, the daily diet, every time we have fruit, we're causing an insulin spike. I think it's really that simple.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Would insulin spikes like this caused by fruit or some other thing lead to headaches and stuff like that?
Definitely.
Like
Yeah.
a lot of people nowadays get headaches for no real apparent reason. I think the
Yeah.
sort of and the the food industry puts sugars into pretty much everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think one of the biggest fruit, being a carbohydrate, especially, and being one of the culprits that turns into glucose, just gets the body to run on glucose. So it's constantly causing the pancreas to overwork, and between that and grains. So I think if we can get off of the grains are a big culprit. The fruit and the grains are a big culprit for these insulin spikes. So if we can get off of the grains, and it can be gradual at first. Like, I've talked about this many times over the years, where like many years ago, I got off of really hard sugars. So I wasn't eating anything with sugar in it anymore, unless it was, something very small at maybe a birthday party or something like that. But it wasn't part of, like, sugars have not been a part of my diet for many years. And grains have not been a part of my diet for many years. Like, I was eating quinoa maybe once a month. Rice, I was hardly ever eating it. I mean, I was already almost grain free. So so this is just a little bit of like tweaking for me. So it's been a process, and it's not something where you just flip the switch and say, okay, now I'm going to do this, full bore. But I would say really, really think about I would totally, that I've been telling people for years, not to eat bread, wheat pasta, or cakes, crackers, cookies, all of those things. Those things can be removed immediately. That would take a lot of the pressure off the pancreas right there. And then just sit, be with maybe some higher protein grains like quinoa for that. Because what happens is the body gets kind of goes into a healing crisis around all those big changes. Suddenly you have all those big changes suddenly. So, you want to have some discernment in how you withdraw from these things, because they are like drugs in the body. So you have to, just be gentle with yourself. And one of the things I'm going, in Doug's book, and Doug would always lecture to say, treat, don't cheat. So that's what we say in Body Electronics. And that's just making a conscious decision on what we're, if we decide to have a treat, if we want to have a kombucha, if we want to, whatever, then that's our treat. And that attitude of that is that we're not doing something wrong. We're not doing something, the body isn't thinking that we're choosing to consume something that's harmful. It's the attitude of we're treating, and we're making that decision to do that. So so that's really important to, it's a lot about attitude too. But on Dr. Berg's recommendation, like in many keto diets, and I mean, I don't eat pork. So, when I would see people promoting keto, and then they were like eating like all of this bacon and sausage, and, like a lot of pork, and what I consider very, very low quality food. And usually they're full of chemicals. And, I haven't eaten that, that's just not something that I would consume. So that turned me off of the idea of keto. Yet now what I understand, I want to just say something about what Dr. Berg said, that in most keto diets, that they have a cheat day per week. So 6 days, you're hardcore keto. 1 day, you can basically go nuts. And on his diet, and this is something I really 100% agree with him on, is that there is no treat, or they call it cheat day. There is no cheat day. There's just so you take it from my perspective. I'm just taking it where I feel to have a treat, whenever that may be. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch the body very carefully. But I'm not going to do something for 6 days and then on the 7th day, just eat whatever I want and fill up on carbs and do whatever. I think that's very anti-productive and hard on the body. It would be hard on the pancreas to just, be 6 days working over into burning fat instead of glucose, and then suddenly get hit again and be like having to do all of these insulin spikes. So I really don't think that that's a good idea. But anyway, that's I'm just experimenting at this point and feeling really good about it. So
good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that if you did real dedication for 6 days, and then on the 7th day went to McDonald's and a bowl of ice cream and pies and all this sort of stuff,
right,
you'd just be completely undoing.
Right.
Progress.
And it takes a long time. Like, it takes at least 48 hours and probably longer for the body to rid the glucose out and get back into fat burning.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
So you're basically, if you're eating anything that's a bad carb, bread, all that stuff, you have to think of, if you eat one thing, apple, whatever, then it's going to take you 48 hours at least to get back into fat burning. So it's just an interesting process that I'm actually just learning more and more and more about, mostly with experimentation with myself.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I'm reminded of a BE video I watched the other day, which had Dr. John. It was the 1996 one. I think it was volume 27 or 28. I watched both of them, and Dr. John was given the people a bit of a sort of a wake up call about don't come to this. This is during a 6-week seminar where people are sort of very dedicated to point holding throughout, and people that hold points all throughout the week and be very committed to their diet throughout the week, and then come to the weekend to get off to town and hit the pubs and indulge in all kinds of things. And
right.
he just basically pointed out that sort of undoing their process. Although I'm sure many people that get into keto, that probably a treat would be maybe something a lot more mild than going to the pub or McDonald's, that sort of thing.
Right.
Now you also mentioned the pancreas quite a bit there, and that reminded me of the pancreas has a role in cancer prevention. So it would seem that taking the pressure off the pancreas would be really important.
Right. Well, you take a lot of pressure off the pancreas with the digestive enzymes that we take, with the body electronics protocol. So you're already taking a lot of pressure off there. I just think to myself, thank goodness I got, I'm going to be 63 this year, and I think I was 39 when I got on the full body electronics nutritional program. And I'm just like so grateful for that. Where would I be if I hadn't have, gotten on that nutritional program and really stuck with it and refined it, continuously refined it. So it's, I'm really grateful for, for body electronics finding me and my willingness to participate. Yeah. So let's talk. You said something earlier before we came online around ego. Is that Is that something
Yeah,
you
yeah. I had a couple more things on nutrition, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay, let's do that first. Let's do the nutrition
Okay.
stuff first. Yeah.
While you were talking about letting go of most fruits, I was sort of reminded of the early days of BE or the early days for myself, when I got back into it, and Dr. Ray said sort of eat three servings, I think maybe 3 servings of raw fruits a day, for vitamin C, of course. And I'm sure that would be probably better than a step up from breads and cakes and cookies and many things that many people would have been snacking on already. So it sort of looks to me like what you're doing is taking that to the next level. Like you
Right.
probably wouldn't need to worry about vitamin C so much if you're having lemon water throughout the day.
Right.
Sort of thing.
That's right. Yeah. I consume 1 to 2 organic lemons each day, and I use the whole lemon. I squeeze it in and put the whole lemon in and make sure the extraction from the pith and the bioflavonoids are in there, and even the rind and everything. There's oils that come from that, and yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
it's all about refinement, really. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And the one thing that comes to mind, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the chosen not forced, where we make our decisions based on our full willingness and choosing to do that before the body forces us into making those choices, and or our external environment. It doesn't necessarily have to be all about the body, but choices can be chosen or forced. And I feel this one, it wasn't forced. It wasn't something that you have to do it because you have degenerative disease or anything like that. But I feel like it was a gentle, my body was really giving me some gentle nudges to take it to the next level. And I was ignoring it a little bit, and just kind of mulling it around and wondering, okay, well, how do I do that? Because I was thinking that my diet was already so clean. And so when this kind of came into my lap, I was like, okay, let's try it. And now I realize how much insulin spiking I was actually doing. I'm going to mention here too, it's really important for the body, especially when you're going through these, because you start to go into a bit of a cleanse and a little bit of healing crisis, perhaps, depending on the amount of carbohydrates that people have been consuming. That will kind of be the level of healing crisis that they'll go through as they withdraw. And I feel like it's really important to be gentle with yourself, but very persistent. So it's just to keep persevering and allowing that those changes to take place. It's a lot about letting go. So a lot of we'll get into the emotional body a little bit in a bit, but it's a lot about letting go and just releasing that. In the last 14 days that I've been doing this, I've been feeling, there's been some grief come forward. So I've been really aware of that and really, being really attentive to that grief and, moving that grief and transmuting to the best of my ability. And, that's a huge part of the physical process of letting go. So two other things about changing things up and cleaning up the diet: the liver and the kidneys. Those are the two kidneys and the liver. So, and I guess you could say the gallbladder too is part of that. So to get that liver clean, I've been taking I've added to my a little bit more. I've always taken a a liver supplement, and I've always recommended that over the years for people. This is the one that I've been taking this for probably, I don't know, at least maybe over 15 years. So I send away to the States for that one. And I find it really good. There's lots of liver cleanses now, milk thistles classic and everything. I think it's really good to give some liver support, especially as you're taking new steps to clean your body. If you're doing some fasting, really make sure your liver and your kidneys are being supported. Drink enough fluid and support that liver with some kind of a gentle cleanse, not something that's really going to be harsh, but just something very, very gentle. And I think that really, really helps the process.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've made a note of that.
The liver is responsible for so much.
Mm.
And even what we breathe, I mean, it's not just about what we eat or drink anymore. It's, it's what we breathe and everything we're exposed to. The liver has to process everything. And the more we can do to keep the liver flushed and nice and clean, I think the easier it will be for us to keep refining that nutritional process and beyond the nutritional process, and especially when fasting.
And the kidneys as well.
Yes.
Do they require any sort of herbal supplement?
It depends on like being well hydrated, of course, is the absolute most important thing for the kidneys, of course. It really depends on the person. It depends on how efficient the kidneys are. One of the reasons I have been like I have been my kidneys, I feel like even genetically perhaps have been one of my weaker organs. So I've been very aware of that most of my life. And so I've taken great care to always be hydrated. And of course, sugar is really, really, really hard on the kidneys. So anything like if people, I heard somebody say recently that the average North American is taking between like 20 and 30 tablespoons of sugar each day in their diet.
Oh, wow.
And, and that's, I suppose that would be consisting of all the other things like that carbs break down into sugar. So perhaps that's including all of that, not just, what people might think of as sugars like in candy or cakes or soda or something like that. I think that would be like like all of those carbs maybe broken down. And so one of the things is to keep the sugars at a minimum, a very, 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 very bare minimum, and keep hydrated. I think those are the two things for the kidneys that we can really do them a great favor. And of course, there always are things like if people are having issues with their kidneys, there's always ways to help and support the kidneys herbally and the bladder, of course, too. And there's lots of great cranberry probiotics. There's probiotics that are developed, with cranberry, the active ingredients that really help the kidneys and the bladder. So that's something to consider too if people are having issues with that.
Okay. So would you still would you recommend people eat kiwi fruit? Does Dr. Berg say anything about kiwi fruit? Would you still be?
Kiwi has a lot of enzymes.
Mm.
And since you're down there in the land of kiwi,
Mm.
When is your seasonal kiwi?
I think it's around summer, so it's sort of coming to an end now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in season, and I would say within reason.
Yep.
You know, kind of the high enzyme activity that kiwi gives you kind of counterbalances that idea about you know, with the sugar. So you know, just I would say enjoy them sparingly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think they were a large part of the program back in the day.
Yeah.
I think because
Yeah.
of to help people with constipation and people with cancer.
Yeah. And mostly for the enzyme activity, as well as the
Mm.
papaya. Remember, the papaya was part
Yeah.
of the program, and that
Yeah.
was
True.
because, you know, John was there where the papayas are growing, but now papayas are on the top 5 GMO fruits and vegetables of the world.
It's tragic, isn't it?
So it is tragic. So you know, I don't even recommend any digestive enzymes that have papaya in them anymore because of that.
Yeah.
But if I can find a really beautiful, and I feel like having a treat, and I find a really beautiful organic papaya somewhere, um, I I just may have, you know, have some nice treat with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. One more question on nutrition, if that's okay.
Sure.
You talked about grains, and I know grains have, you know, a ton of pesticides in them sometimes, and then there's sort of ability to break them down is sometimes very difficult depending on the grain and so on.
Mhm.
These ones, and these not that I'm trying to sell you this or anything, but these are pre sort of fermented or
Yeah.
they're pre-digested.
Right.
That company reckons a lot of their foods are pre-digested or like ready, you know, so it's I think the phrase is something like nutritionally available.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't think they use 100% organic ingredients, so there might be
Okay.
the occasional issue with something there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
I
mean
think
it
the biggest
depends on
issue
what
with
they do.
grains is the carbohydrate,
Okay.
and of course the, you know, the chemicals, but the carbohydrate is the biggest tax on the body with grains. And of course I'll throw soy in here into this discussion too, because soy uh well, soy is really at the right, it's right there hand in hand with wheat, but soy is really, really hard on the body. And whether it's organic or not, um, soy is, I suggest people really research about that and find out all the reasons why soy isn't good for us. Um, it has like um, an estrogen disruptor, and it's not a natural estrogen, you know, not naturally uh, providing estrogen. This is a type of estrogen that actually disrupts the hormonal function in the body. So soy is really something to completely eliminate from the diet.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, letting go of grains is a process.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
I
They're
used to be
advertised
very,
pretty heavily over here.
I used to be extremely addicted, and I suppose it was the insulin spikes that helping create that addiction, where you start to get cravings and cravings, you know, and it's like the only thing that will satisfy it is a carb or a sugar. That's because the body is so used to just burning and using glucose for energy. That's the important part of the keto switch is when you go into ketosis, the body is using fat. So the fats that I'm going to be using more and more is ghee and uh, pasture fed um, butter, and some coconut oil, and some avocados and avocado oil. Also, hemp and flax are great, yet I don't find them very tasty, especially flax oil. I find it very bitter. and they're also very volatile, so they have to be used up so quickly. So yeah, so those are the fats. And then once your body turns over from the using the glucose to the fat, then you know, you can eat lots of fatty things. Like you can have pecans, for instance, and you know, good organic. I just received my my order from with good organic pecans. So that's something, you know, once you're in full ketosis and you're burning that fat, you know, there's lots of fatty, delicious, natural foods that can be, I feel, more satisfying than that satisfaction that you feel when you eat a carb, yet there's always a downside to eating carbs because you're, you know, as you have an insulin spike, you might feel really good. It's a very pleasure. I think it produces dopamine and, you know, all these things happen. And then there's this crash and that's really hard on the body. So I feel like starting to burn fat instead of glucose is a really healthy choice.
Okay, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's lots of great fatty things, and I'm not going to do this for a few weeks because I want to be in full ketosis, like I said. But there's lots of, Dr. Berg has a lot of recipes. He and his wife created these recipes. So there's lots of things you can eat that look like for instance, almond, and it would have to be organic. Almond, anything you make with almond flour or almonds, because almonds, the almond industry, almond milk, most of it's not organic. And what you find even in health food stores, and it's a very chemically laced food. So avoid anything from almonds that isn't organic. But if you can get some really good organic almond flour, you can make, you know, like, you know, lots of things. Like there's little pancakes and different things, and even breads and cakes and different things that you can make with different flours. I mean, you can have coconut flour and lots of different, you know, fatty flours to make beautiful food, you know, that are delicious, that it's just not based in carbohydrates.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. So that's Dr. Berg, B-E-R-G.
Yeah, Dr. Eric
Put him
Berg.
up on the page.
I think he has like maybe 2,005, between 2,500 and 3,000 videos.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've watched many. I binged on him a few weeks ago, and that just sort of, I mean, he just jumped out. I was just searching for something, and then all of a sudden it came, you know, it came on. One of his videos came on, and I just thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. It just sort of happened on its own. And then that's when I started listening to him, and I just went from, I think I went for 3 days and just binged on a lot of his videos.
Wow, that's cool.
Learned a lot. I want to say on one of the things that he really, his videos really helped me. So he talks a lot about potassium and being one of the electrolytes, and potassium, we need between 4,700 and 5,000 milligrams of potassium every day. And I wasn't getting that. When I looked at my, you know, looked back at my diet, I searched, you know, what's the highest foods in potassium, and because I had taken bananas and potatoes out of my diet quite a while ago because of the starch and the sugar. And so, and Dr. Berg recommends no bananas. And so I started looking at what to eat to get that potassium. Mostly it's in green leafy food. like kale and arugula and those sorts of foods. But there's, you can find a list of high potassium foods that isn't potatoes or bananas. And so I've been really concentrating on building my potassium, but I've started supplementing potassium. And just, I feel like I was really potassium depleted. And right as soon as I started taking it, I perked up. I found that I needed more potassium. And,
Wow.
and if you research it and see like how much you have to eat in order to get that much potassium, it's a lot. It's like, a huge salad with lots and lots and lots of greens and lots of vegetables. So I feel like I've been building my potassium back. So I'll continue to supplement and indefinitely until I feel that my diet is really, completely taking care of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been, as you know, I've recommended supplementation of magnesium for, all of my body electronics career. And, magnesium and potassium go hand in hand. And it was really a light bulb really went on when I started hearing Dr. Berg's videos on potassium. And so that was another thing I wanted to mention today, that's really been helpful. And I see how, like, he does these videos where there's a list of symptoms of potassium deficiency. And I'm sure that when people look at that, they'll see themselves in that list. So yeah, go nuts on the potassium rich foods.
Okay, yeah. I imagine it has some roles in the endocrine system and hormone production and stuff like that as well.
Say that again.
Does potassium have roles in the endocrine system and producing hormones and stuff like that?
Mostly the potassium is, the potassium, the calcium, and the magnesium are like the three main electrolytes. So the electrolytes, as far as, to make it really simple, I think the electrolytes have like the most basic effect. I mean, they're required. These are required minerals. And they're required, I think they're required for almost every single process that the body goes through. You think about when you go into, or not you, but when people go to the ER for almost anything, they're often put on an electrolyte drip. And, it's often the thing that brings most things, I'm sure if you knew a lot of ER people, they would say that just bringing those electrolytes back into the body is like the first aid in, and then you go from there because they are so profoundly required.
Wow. Okay. That's a really good point, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Anyway, I know I feel a lot better being really conscious about eating potassium rich foods and supplementing.
That's great to know. Yeah. Shall we talk about ego?
Yeah. So I'm assuming that comes from something that I put on online this week. When I wake up in the, when I wake up in that in between space, there's often an inspiration there that come in words. And that inspiration at one point this week, so it was ego equals willful refusal to see the truth. So that was the line that was there. So I'll often put that, online just to, that was my inspiration. Then later on in that day, there was on the body electronics group pages where I put this, and it had, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something like, because I started thinking about truth, because I'll often, when those inspiration comes, I will contemplate it and look at it deeper. And so then I thought, well, truth is, what is truth? I mean, we can, talk about that. I mean, everybody has their own truth. It's an individualized thing. Yet there is this core truth. There is a truth that is at the core of our existence. And it's not swayed by opinion, and it's not dualistic. It is just this energy that is truth. And when I looked at it further, you'd have to look it up on the body electronics group page, but it really had a lot. It was tied into that first line about the willful, how did it go now?
Ego is a willful
Egos
refusal.
equals willful refusal to see the truth. And I thought that word "see" was interesting too. So there was this tie-in to love, and that energy, that unconditional core energy that is within us, that we call love, but this is like a core energy. And truth, when I looked at it, it was like truth and love had this overlap between those two energies. They weren't separated. They were, that core truth. And it's something people really have to just feel into. So I think that, and even that inspiration around ego, there's so much talk about, ego. And sometimes there's, I was watching a debate recently, and they were both trying to prove each other wrong. And what came to me was ego attempting to call out ego becomes this like continuous process of opinion. And so truth is beyond all of that. It's beyond all of that. It's beyond opinion. It's beyond any attachment to a duality. It's beyond that right and wrong. It's beyond that. So truth isn't, somebody believing that they're correct. Truth is beyond that. If they're hanging on to something that they believe is true, to the exclusion of something that's counter to that is, that right and wrong duality, then that is not the truth I'm speaking of. That's a temporary truth. We can come to these levels of truth and like, wow, that, these realizations, I would say. But if it has to be a truth based on the exclusion of something else, then go deeper, because there's deeper access to that place that's non-dualistic. So I think that's, we're all ego, right? Ego to me is as, it has a hold on us to the amount that we're attached to duality. And, in body electronics, when we get into the mental body, we're looking at those dualities so that we can transmute our attachment to both sides and bring that duality together. And then beyond that, we find a place that is without resistance. It is without the this of duality. And that's where truth, that's where that core truth that that is there, that energy is there. And it needs no belief, or it doesn't need anything to exist. It just is, or it is. And that energy of love is there. And all of those core energies that are within us that are non-dualistic. They're actually the fountain of life. It's why we have these magnificent bodies. It's that energy is continuously there, and it's the source that is allowing us to be present in these bodies. It's the source of these bodies and everything else. I mean, it's really that energy is the source, that non-dualistic energy. So the ego is just, we all are, everybody that's in a body has an ego. The ego is actually the tool that we use to go back through the dualities in order to bring them together, in order to find those attachments and bring them together and move that energy into oneness. It's the ego that's doing that. It's the ego that is willing. The willingness comes from the ego. So it's not something to be to condemn. It's something to realize that it is our the part of us that allows us to move back into that oneness. It's how stuck or how attached do we get to something along the way. That's really what we have to look at.
Okay.
How determined are we to stay the same? How determined are we to, just like that line that came, ego equals, what was it?
Refusal to see the truth. Willful refusal.
Willful refusal. Yeah. So I think willful has a great place in that sentence too. So it's like, we can be very willful to move forward and transmute our resistance. But if we're willfully choosing not to do that, then we're going to get stuck in that spot.
Yeah.
And that ego, just turn around,
Yeah, there are a whole lot of phrases that sort of pop into my mind when you say that. Like some people talk about getting out of our own way, stuff like that, and allowing ourselves to have good things in life. And I think being dragged along something, you want to learn something and you go study under the expert and they drag you along kicking and screaming and that sort of thing, and we sort of undermine our own approach in some ways, our own, undermine our own life. And then and I can look back at my life and see how I've done that unconsciously.
Yes.
Times, and you have a period of growth, and then you can look back and say, wow, it makes perfect sense that I didn't get the job promotion or didn't get this relationship with this person the way I wanted at the time, or I didn't earn this much money, or whatever it was.
Well, I feel like life offers us abundant opportunities, and it's up to us to first recognize opportunities when they arrive and to make the most of them. I think that's very, very, very important to the evolutionary pathway, to really just recognize when an opportunity comes and really go for it. Really just, heart and soul, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah, it's one way we live. I've lived my life somewhat as much as I'm aware of the opportunities that come. I'm sure many have slipped by, but when I recognize something as an opportunity that's going to, teach me, I've had tremendous teachers in my life, really, really tremendous teachers. Yeah, I've had, my teacher in Ontario, Canada, an Ojibwe elder, and he passed last year. I was under his wing in prayer for 24 years, and
I'm sorry to
that made
hear
a tremendous. I think he's gone on and he's doing quite well, but yeah, he was just a tremendous teacher in my life. Drumbelow Melchizedek, Doug Morrison was fabulous. John Ray was etheric and a tremendous teacher. There's been many, many really beautiful teachers that I've been grateful to receive teachings from. And it's an interesting process because I know throughout my life, I have to mention my grandmother too, my maternal grandmother. Her name was Velma. She was like my first teacher of a higher consciousness. And I feel like when I look at my life and in relation to having teachers and learning and growing, first I sought it. I really, internally and then externally. So I had this internal, I knew that I required someone to teach me. And so that when I found someone, I knew immediately, I always knew, it was always very intuitive, and I knew immediately that person was going to be a teacher. And then I would really just make the most of it. And that served me very, very, very well. And other teachers too, like Jane Brown. I mean, Jane Brown was so humble, and she never taught body electronics formally, but personally, she shared it she shared generously with me, after class and on weekends. And, she was a generous teacher. So, and we're always teaching and learning, of course, we're always doing that. But what I'm talking about is really opportunities to really take an evolutionary step. And that, in my experience, has required teachers. So it's like this internal asking, and then the universe provides, then we see the opportunity and we make the most of it.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That kind of goes with, with the ego too, because the ego recognizes, the ego has to relax itself and become very willing to progress and to change. And that's usually where people get kind of caught, is that they, that progression or that change isn't something that makes them comfortable. So then they sort of attach themselves to certain ideas or beliefs or opinions that keep them the same, keep them pretty much at a status quo. And that's very slow evolutionarily.
Yeah, I think I've been guilty of that in the past.
Well, we all have to some degree, huh?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's just part of life.
yeah. It is. I mean, I can remember being in this. I think I talked about an abusive friendship, sort of semi-abusive friendship in the last video or one of the previous videos, and
Mhm.
I just didn't want to acknowledge that friendship was getting worse. And when I sort of came out of it, or had a few really good emotional healing crises on it, I saw we were both kind of dragging each other down because he was projecting onto me, and he was frustrated with me, and it was my fault. But I was just acting as a kind of, don't really want to say this, but I was acting like an emotional rubbish bucket or something, soaking up all this bad energy and just not wanting to acknowledge that the bad energy was even there, so to speak, or bad attitude, and yeah, John Ray always said, you shouldn't suppress your emotions, but that's exactly what I was doing while I was sort of thinking at the same time. Proficient in BE, a BE practitioner. I'm pretty devoted to it and stuff, and it was like, I don't know, a real hypocrisy in myself, and I didn't want to see that either. That was a pretty horrible healing crisis.
Yeah, those painful levels are really tremendous. They really take us into some beautiful transitions and transmutations.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something about when you said we shouldn't suppress our emotions, just for people that are watching this that don't know the full process of body electronics.
Yeah, it's
we
better
never project our emotions toward anything or anyone. And that's including the earth. So I've talked a lot about that in previous times. So I won't go into that too much, but just so people know that when the suppression moves into a venting. So, and we do that within a certain, in certain parameters. And like I said, never projecting, not even silently with our thoughts, to be able to be very aware and conscious of our thought processes. And when we get into those situations where something triggers us, and we're fully aware of the trigger within us, yet not fully taking responsibility for the trigger and for that emotion. So we either suppress it or we project it. So when the evolutionary thing to do, we're working with transmutation, is that it usually requires being alone, especially in the early times when we get a little more adept after much practice. We can do it sort of spontaneously and on the spot. I'm getting a little bit better at that after all these years. I can recognize, if someone projects something on me, and sort of the reactionary, this is what I'm hearing you say too, Guy, sort of the reactionary thing is to project back, but perhaps it's not done, maybe it's done silently, or suppressed. So when we have that situation, where people always have those situations where we're having, if we're in community or we're in family or anywhere where we're with other people, we can get triggered. So it's really about owning it, taking full self-responsibility for it, and taking time. This is a really important part, is taking time to transmute those emotions. Don't let them slip back into suppression, because they will come out as a projection. They'll come out randomly as a projection on someone else, and we don't want that. So make time to use the principles of transmutation. And you can, for the new people watching this, there's lots on my site. How We Heal by Doug Morrison has a really good comprehensive book on body electronics. Yeah, basically there's 3 things we're looking at. We're looking for the word pattern, the emotion, and the memory, which is a result of thought. So we're looking for those 3 things, and we're going to encompass those 3 things with gratitude, with forgiveness, and with love, as unconditional as we can access. And those are the 3 powers. Those are the powers that transmute what has been brought to the surface. Eventually, we can look at the people who give us the triggers, who stimulate the triggers. We can look at them with pure and authentic gratitude. And when we do that, then we're really getting somewhere. We can be really grateful for that, that uncomfortable feeling, whether it's anger or grief or apathy or pain, whatever what in the emotional body. We can get to the gratitude. We're really going to start to move some of that emotion. And when we transmute it with one or more of the 3 powers, that energy literally lifts from our field. And that energy is then recycled. It's back into pure energy, and then it's recycled. We say back into the void, into the great void. So, often we see healing occurring in our physicality, or some kind of a change, or we may see changes in our external environment. We may not be attracting the same pattern anymore in our world. So it's really a beautiful work. It's truly body electronics, the evolution of consciousness.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
So I feel that's a good place to complete for today. Is that good? Okay. So thank you so much, Guy, for continuing on these. We'll do another one really soon.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
And have a great weekend. Yeah. Yeah. My pleasure, really. Yeah. The sun is shining here. I'm here in the Kootenay Mountains. This is the picture I took. And this is Nelson. So there's the Orange Bridge there, and I'm right about there. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you, everyone.